wreck avoidances,
Stay low. He's high, stay low.
daring passes,
Oh, you're gonna get it.
silly jumps,
Oh my god, a drive-through.
the thrill of victory,
They're against the wall. Good one, Mark. Stay low.
and the occasional mishap.
My sand crash.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
A new beginning with familiar faces. For the first time, Lionheart is going back to its roots. 18 races to determine who is the best and the most exciting form of auto racing on the planet. 200-mile-an-hour Indy cars, inches from disaster or glory. There can only be one inaugural champion, whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. Find out next. The Lionheart Speedway Series, presented by DMLC Racing Channel, starts now.
After the cornfields of Iowa helped bring forward not just a first-time winner, but some championship drama, the pressure is on for some drivers to perform. Barrett Rolfe and Alexis Newsom both endured horrific luck at Iowa Speedway, meaning they lose the benefits of some of their drop weeks. Now, as the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by the DMLC Racing Channel speeds its way to America's home for racing, the question remains, can they avoid trouble again? Or will today open the doors for some, such as Matt Taylor, Tony Shalvin, and Robert Malechka? We're about to find out. This is the Karnox Charlotte 200, presented by Chris Fowler Racing. Hello everyone, and welcome to racespottv and ESTV's coverage of the Lionheart Racing Series, powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear, like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com, and don't forget to use the promo code LionHRT15 for 15% off orders. My name is Justin Prince. Alongside me in the booth tonight is the setup wizard for the Lionheart Racing Series, Andrew Kinsella, with Arjuna Kankipati in the producer's seat. You can also follow along with our action thanks to our partners to follow your favorite teams and drivers in the virtual world of motorsport. Let's dive straight into our sim experience countdown to green, as boy oh boy, what a schedule it's been for the past couple weeks in particular, Andrew. Iowa brought some fireworks, and now it's the home stretch. One more short track, 2.5 miles, and a big track to go.
Yes, Justin, and what a schedule it is to close out this year. As you say, we've got just a little bit of everyone, or a little bit of everything to make sure that everyone is on their toes here to close out the year. We've got 7 drivers that are competing for this championship right now. They still have a legitimate shot at it, and so we still have all to play for here as we round out this schedule.
That schedule is going to be so critical now, with drop weeks being factored in for many of these competitors, and as well, that triple crown at Auto Club Speedway to round out the campaign is going to be so pivotal if you want to contend in the driver's standings. Speaking of which, let's take a look at them, presented by the DMLC Racing Channel. We're entering today, it's Barrett Rolfe, who has the points lead, but because of that rough week for the Ascari Autosport machine, Matt Taylor, with the drops calculated in, just 2 points behind. Tony Shalvin remains within distance, Alexis Newsom drops significantly to 4th, and Robert Malechka still has 2 more races to close up to even himself out with his respective competitors. The top 5, and even to the top 6 with Alexander Vandersant, are so tightly packed where any mistakes from here on out could cause a massive swing.
I'd even go so far as the top 7 with Joe Brandt. I think he does still have an outside shot at this if we see more fireworks like we saw at Iowa. And this is definitely one of those races where that can happen. So each one of these competitors in that top 7, they need to make sure that they're having a clean race here today and scoring maximum points to take advantage of this track.
It's going to be so intriguing how that plays out, and in turn, how some of the organizations race amongst one another here at Charlotte. Speaking of which, the HyperX team standings. And one thing to note, one driver has withdrawn from the series, that is Christopher. So that will have an impact on said team standings. Adrenaline Motorsports has the advantage for now over Team Race vs. Red. Then Factory Backed and Team Race vs. Black closely on behind. But there's a chance now, with one less driver to help that leading team's efforts, that could see some shuffling from here on out, Andrew, over the next few races.
This is the gap that Raceverse and Factory Back needed to get into this championship fight here in the team standings, Justin. Adrenaline was so strong early on, but without Christopher, they've only got 2 shots in every barrel from here on out. It's only 4 races, and so they can potentially hold on, but this is a huge door open for both Raceverse and Factory Backed.
It's going to be so intriguing to see how those 3 organizations play out. Race vs. Red, a ton of momentum recently. Factory Back with the majority of the polls this season as a group and contenders each week. And Adrenaline Motorsports, of course, their consistency. In turn, a lot of drivers have been rookies in the Speedway Series. Let's take a look at the rookie standings presented by buttkicker. And similar to what we've seen with the driver standings, many of the contenders are there for the rookie side. This rookie crop, though, has been so consistent across multiple Lionheart series this season with some of their performances in turn, Andrew.
Absolutely. This has been a fantastic rookie season for many of these drivers here, and I want to draw particular attention to the driver at the top of the standings in Barrett Rolfe. You'll notice that Matt Taylor and Alex Van de Sant, they're on that team Race First squad. They might not be on the exact same team, but they are working together. Alexis Newsom, Robert Malechka, they're both on Factory Back. Barrett Rolfe, however, he is doing this on his own at Ascari Autosports, basically. So it has been very, very impressive watching him take on Race First, Factory Back, and of course, Adrenaline Motorsports in that overall championship as well.
You know, there's a lot of support from Manuel Tolentino for that Ascari Autosport group. He does a lot of the spotting for Barrett Rolfe for plenty of these Lionheart races. We'll have to see how things fare out for the rookie Stein. But that leads us into our series details presented by Minus 273, the premier name in karting gloves. Their industry-leading gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of breathable polyspandex. Whether you're a kart or sim racer, Minus 273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more info on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz. Don't forget to also use the promo code Minus273LHRS15 for 15% off orders. And what a season it's been so far for the Speedway Series utilizing the Dallara DW12. But the big question now remains in turn, you're the driver who builds those custom fixed setups. How will that fare tonight for Charlotte?
It's going to be an interesting one tonight, Justin. The setup is pretty forgiving. This is a tough track, so I've given them a pretty forgiving set, but what that means is that there's going to be some pack racing here tonight. So these drivers are going to have to be patient, especially the drivers in the championship. They're going to have to pick their battles, not let the car get out from under them too much, not let themselves get caught up in other people's messes. So while the driving might be a little bit easier from one standpoint, it can also be much more difficult being in that traffic for so long today.
That's going to make things so intriguing, especially with some of the narrowness in the corners here at Charlotte. Speaking of Charlotte, let's take a look at the past event details as Lionheart returns to America's home for racing. There were 2 different races in the DW12 in the past with 2 different victors, and both times, the car that led the most laps went on to win. Just 8 lead changes is the highest mark. The defending winner in this chassis is Big Joe Hasser. That was back in Season 3. It's going to be intriguing in turn, though, because you'd have to think then in that mark, the experience levels for some may not be as high in the DW12 compared to others in the field here at Charlotte.
Absolutely. There are a few drivers here who have raced in some of those races here at Charlotte in the DW12, so that experience is going to be invaluable for them. The likes of Joe Branch and Tony Schowen, they're going to be on a little bit of the front foot here. They know what to expect from a racetrack like this. But at the same time, these rookies have done a great job preparing themselves. They've dove in with both feet into the practice races this week. And I believe that everyone in that top 7 is all in on this championship. So I think that everyone will come in here very prepared to for what we have to come here.
All going to be intriguing tonight here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Here, this track located in Concord, North Carolina. Let's talk about it a little more in depth. 1.5 miles is the distance for Charlotte Motor Speedway. It's been open since 1960 and hosts many prestigious races such as the Coca-Cola 600 in stock car racing. And this complex has grown to also host a dragway nearby as well as its own dirt track. But this track itself, 24 degrees in the turns and banking, 5 degrees down the straightaways, track record held by Tony Stewart back in 1998 in an IndyCar, Andrew.
Yes, and this is actually a deceptively tricky track, Justin. So a couple of unique features of Charlotte compared to some of the other D-shaped ovals we have in America is the banking here, you're actually transitioning downhill from the banking onto the straightaway. So that means the exit off of 2 and the exit off of 4, it tends to throw the car towards the exit, and that's going to be a danger zone throughout this race, especially for cars who are hugging the inside with a car on the outside. That's where we might see a lot of people coming together. It's also a fairly bumpy track, and as you mentioned before, a fairly narrow track. So this is going to be a tall order for some of these drivers here today.
Qualifying is now starting to get underway here at Charlotte Motor Speedway for tonight's Lionheart Speedway Series action. Taking a look at Alexander Vandersen, one of the first drivers to jump out on the racetrack. Before we begin this said coverage, it is to note though that Christopher Kresge has an EOL for avoidable contact that is still yet to be served after he did not race at Iowa, while Luis Gonzalez Nunez, who had probably one of the worst nights I've seen in a while in this series, had 3 unforced errors at Iowa, also will have an EOL, so those drivers not expected to put in qualifying times. The rest, however, were putting in times in practice in the 23.6s to the 24 flats from the top to the bottom of the board. To start things off for Vandersen, a 24.657 solo. Curious how qualifying is going to go, Andrew. How would you approach this in turn to make sure you get the best position possible tonight?
If it were me, I'd be throwing away lap 1. I'd be using lap 1 to get as much momentum as possible, and then doing exactly what Alex Van de Sande is doing on screen right now. Is he's sticking really, really close to the bottom on lap 2, taking the shortest way around possible, and making sure that while he's doing that, he's not scrubbing the tires too much, having too much steering input, and letting those bumps affect him too much. And that is the key here, as he actually goes to P2 just behind Matt Wagner. Only 0.08 of a second separate our front 2 rows at this point in qualifying.
Also receiving word that George Anzotto, it appears, will also not elect to qualify tonight, so we may see the 6 towards the back of the field this evening. Barrett Rolfe, you see, though, needs to qualify well tonight, Andrew, because it's been his Achilles heel the entire campaign. His starting position is in the high teens. It's so hard to win a championship when you always have to charge away to the pack.
Absolutely it is, Justin. It's one of those things where sooner or later Barrett just has to figure out how to qualify these cars on tracks, especially tracks like this, where you have the ability to really maximize your time if you put in the practice time. But we see, again, Barrett Rolfe just isn't able to pull it off. It looks like he actually may have invalidated that lap there, and he is mired down in now 15th position on the timesheets.
He is the only driver so far not to have recorded a second lap time, and the reason you can get that, clipping the artificial turf that is in the middle of the quad oval. If you clip too much of it, you end up getting an invalidated lap time. Now looking at Nick DeGroot, meanwhile, it's been an interesting campaign, I will say, for DeGroot, because he's willing to help out his teammates, of course, with factory back, but he's also had flashes of speed throughout the season.
Yes, he's not a slow driver by any stretch of the imagination, but more often than not, he's been helping his teammates Alexis Newsom and Robert Malechka getting to the results that they need, because they're in the championship and he's a little bit far back at this point. But you've seen time and time again, especially in qualifying, that he has the speed in this car. So while he may not be good this year in terms of the championship. I expect him to be competing for the championship for years to come, as he puts in a 23.923. That's only good for 11th quickest, but he's still within a 10th of the lead, as we have almost 15 drivers now within a 10th of the lead. So this is a very close field as we get into the last minute of qualifying here.
New driver top of the board. Meanwhile, Mike Rigney just put in a 23.852, knocking the defending race winner at Iowa Speedway, Caleb Benchie, to second position. Meanwhile, Newsom looking for some good luck after several miscues during pit lane entries throughout the campaign. Qualifying's been a strong suit. Newsom up to 4th position on the racetrack. Dean Mall was the last of the drivers currently taking times. Robert Mleczka, 3rd, only was able to get to the mid-pack around 5th position in the session. So an interesting qualifying performance tonight for some of these drivers. It's going to be intriguing how the race in turn fares, Andrew, in just a few moments.
Yeah, I think that qualifying will have a fairly big impact on the race. I think that it's going to be difficult to pass with just how narrow this track is. So I think that what we're seeing here is that this qualifying order is going to have a big impact, at least for the first bit of this race.
With that, it's time to head towards your starting grid for the Karnox Charlotte 200, presented by Chris Fowler Racing. Drivers making their way to the starting grid, led by Mike Rigney. The Synergy Motorsports Blue Machine sets the pole time tonight with a 8.53. Caleb Benchie starts second, just 9/1000ths of a second off the pole time, with Matt Wagner, one of his best qualifying performances in a long while. Row 2 alongside Alexis Newsom. Robert Mleczka, 3rd, with one of the lower starting positions surprisingly this season in 5th, with Vandersant rounding out the top 6. Right behind him, it's Tony Schauman and Chris Fowler, with Dakota DeMade in 9th position. Matt Taylor will start in 10th position, just 5/100ths back, with Ron Hacker looking to rebound after an up-and-down week at Iowa alongside Craig Forsythe. Forsythe came just short in the Retro Series at Michigan. Jeff Gion starts in 13th with Trevor Malone in 14th, while Nick DeGroot starts 15th. Ken Hacker's in 16th with Joe Branch and Charles Teed rounding out the top 18. 3 other drivers took times in qualifying. Alex Guyon, Dean Mall, and the shocker once more is Barrett Rolfe. An invalidated second lap sees him start 21st, the last of the drivers to take a time. 22nd goes to AJ Musselman. Luis Gonzalez Nunez will have an EOL, originally slotted for 23rd. Matt Houston was slated to start alongside him in 24th. Samuel Ryman coming off some decent momentum in turn from Iowa, starts 25th. Georgian Zotto 26th. Chris Kresge will also get an EOL, 27th grid slot. Gary Gonzo rounds out the 28 drivers set to start from Charlotte. As the drivers continue to make their way to the starting grid, we have 4 featured cameras to keep an eye on for our competitors this evening from Charlotte Motor Speedway. First, it's the Karnox onboard camera. It's Tony Schauman. Karnox, makers of the finest esports gaming chairs. We've got your back. Visit Karnox.com. The HyperX onboard camera is carried by Charles Teed. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. Samuel Ryman carries the Graphics Esports onboard camera. Graphics Esports, world-class design from the real world to virtual. Visit GraphicsEsports.com. And the last of the onboard cameras to keep an eye on tonight is the buttkicker onboard camera with defending race winner Caleb Benchie. What you see and what you hear is what you feel. For more information, visit thebuttkicker.com. That's a look at your featured onboard cameras for tonight. Andrew, your keys to victory here at Charlotte Motor Speedway tonight.
Number 1 is keeping your nose clean. This is going to be a tight race for most of this race here today, Justin, and the driver who keeps their nose clean is going to come out on top. Second one is manage your fuel. The fuel window here, 42 to 43 laps. They need 46 to 47 to make it on just 2 stops. So if any driver can do that, they might just be on the front foot if this thing goes green. And finally, let's look at the championship and thinking big picture here. All of these championship contenders have got to be thinking about that first and foremost in all of their moves here tonight.
Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart, and this is the start of the Karnox Charlotte 200, presented by Chris Fowler Racing. Mike Rigney's off and away. We're racing from Charlotte. Battling side by side for second as Mike Rigney, who started on the pole for the first time this season, leads the first lap from Charlotte. 133 laps are on the board, but already most of these drivers are making it clear they want to defend towards the bottom, it seems, Andrew.
Yeah, the bottom is where you want to be early here, Justin. It's where all the traction is, and it's the shortest way around, so it's going to be very difficult for some of these drivers. They're going to have to start trying on the high side here soon, but they don't really want to do that. I think that the bottom, at least at the beginning of the race here, is where you really want to be.
Quick note, Charles T slammed in the outside wall on the opening lap. You see in turns 3 and 4, too high on the opening lap, going 3 wide at the back of the field, and in turn, he's already in the pit lane getting damage repairs done. Again, just on the first lap, Andrew, not what Charles wanted to see.
Definitely not what Charles wanted to see or what he needed. It looked like just he took it 3 wide, and it's really, really tough to take it 3 wide here. There is 3 lines, but it's a very tight 3 lines here for most of the track. The tri-oval does have 4, but going into turn 3 is one of those places you really don't want to be caught on the outside of a 3 wide situation.
That was with Barrett Rolfe with Alex Gouillon up the middle in that regard. Already starting lap 5, Mike Rigney continues to hold on to the race lead, trying to defend that bottom groove, but Matt Wagner and company continue to try and flare out a bit to the middle line to try and get side by side. Rigney's able to do so entering turn 3, along with Wagner, but Wagner can't get the run he's looking for to try and drive by.
Yeah, it's really starting to tighten up here, especially in the mid pack a little bit, Justin. We're starting to see a lot more 2 wide action here as we're looking at Dakota DeMade and Jeff Young. Jeff is trying to put it on the outside there, but he just doesn't quite have enough space. But Nick DeGroot is also trying to make that low line work below them. So it'll be interesting to see whether DeMade can sort of cover off both sides of the line here, so to speak, and keep them both at bay, or whether one will be able to stick a nose in and make it 2 wide for that 12th position.
And you see just how some of these drivers, if you get to the bottom 2, you're able to drive by quickly, such as the case for the group to move up to 13th. Here's the view from Trevor Malone trying to build up a run on the middle line here. And you can also tell a bit with how these bumps fare. This is a track that can get fairly bumpy to battle with. All of this as well, Matt Wagner has ripped away the race lead, getting to the inside of Rigney's car.
Yeah, great pass from Matt Wagner, and this is what we've seen from him a number of times this year, is he really likes to be in the front of the field. I think Mike Rigney, while he likes to be in front and likes to be near the front, I don't think he necessarily needs to be in front. But at the same time, he's really challenging Matt Wagner on the outside here through 1 and 2, and he might just take it back as we come onto the backstretch here.
See some of the other drivers continue to shuffle about, utilizing the top line around the straightaway itself against the wall. It's worth noting your track conditions for tonight are seeing the track temperature increase a little bit as the rubber gets built up around the circuit. Started around 82 degrees Fahrenheit, so right up to 83, that's 28 degrees Celsius. Air temp, 26 degrees Celsius or 78 degrees Fahrenheit. Partly cloudy skies. In Sim Day is iracing day, May 15th, 2021, already past 9 p.m. So, fully under the lights, Andrew, for this entire race.
Fully under the lights, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with both the track and the air temp. We might see both the track and the air fall just a little bit as the run goes on here. But it should... Oh no, Tony Schowen is around!
Caution is out for the first time, and it's a massive one. Several cars upside down. 4, 5 plus gather underneath the apron. Matt Taylor still flipping upside down. Second in the points coming in the driver's standings.
That was Matt Taylor, that was Tony Schowen, that was a number of championship contenders right there caught up in that wreck, and it looks like that they both have some fairly substantial damage. Looks like Tony Schowen, and I can't tell who that car underneath him was. They just got a little bit too close off of 2 and just made some contact. Tony right around, it was, I'm getting a report, it was Caleb Bensey on the inside there. Just one of those things where 2 cars sort of went into one. I think Tony... wasn't expecting Caleb to wash up a little bit, and at the same time, Tony came down just a little bit while Bensey was walking up. Matt Taylor, absolutely nowhere to go. Huge impact for him, and that's going to be some major championship implications for both of those drivers.
And as you can tell, several more also included. DeMade, who's had some good runs as a rookie so far. Nick DeGroot, Shawan, Taylor, several more stacking on into the incident. Under caution for the first time today. Here is another look. And this will have an impact on the team standings. You have to feel too. Several race first cars involved, as well as a few of the Adrenaline Motorsports machines.
Absolutely, it'll have an impact on that as well. Although I will say that all three major teams were sort of represented in that, with Nick DeGroot getting a piece as well as for factory backed. So it might not be as disastrous for some of these teams as it first looked, but at the same time, major change early in the race, especially because that was so far up the field that happened. But looking back on track, we did have some pit stops under that caution, Justin, and only 4 drivers stayed out. That's Matt Wagner, Mike Rigney, our top 2, as well as Sam Ryman and Matt Houston. Now, we know that Sam Ryman and Matt Houston have done this before, and they have potentially pitted with 1 to go before the caution ends. It'll be interesting to see whether they do that here, or whether Mike Rigney and Matt Wagner staying out with them will tempt them to stay out as well.
And here's part of the reason too, Andrew, that could be so critical is, you mentioned the fuel could go as long as 46. Some of the projections were seen to as low as 42, 43, and there was a projection window that seen drivers potentially having to come in with about 4 or 5 to go. This stop takes that uncertainty out and makes it a 2-stop race for everyone who's taken service completely.
Yes, absolutely. So I do like this play, especially for the guys like Robert Malechka, who, now that Ryman and Houston did come in with 1 to go here, they've basically lost almost nothing compared to the top 2, and at the same time they have fresh tires and a full tank of gas that'll get them to the finish of the race. Right now, Matt Wagner and Mike Rigney are still praying for a little bit more caution to make their strategy work, whereas the rest of the field here, they have no real fuel worries, at least so far as this strategy is going right now.
Lights are still on top of the iRacing pace car as well, since Charles Teed was multiple laps down and out of the race at the time of the caution flag. Matt Taylor has lost several laps as a result of the incident. Dakota DeMay currently getting damage repairs after his respective incident. He had lost his full front wing as a result of the accident and had to tow a few stops before his stall. Tony Shawan also getting significant damage repair. Ron Hacker has lost laps getting repairs as well. There's also repairs done for Caleb Bensey's car of 17 seconds. The contact ended up significantly damaging his right side pod. So overall, several drivers hampered now from this point forward, but it's going to be intriguing how the fresh tires fare out compared to the slightly older rubber of Wagner and Rigney, as we expect 1 to go this time. Yeah,
this is shaking up the field, no doubt about it. I will say that one beneficiary of that whole melee and caution was Barrett Rolfe, who is now up all the way into 12th position here. So that has really benefited him in his march through the field. He hadn't been making too many places up. He did make a few positions, but he hadn't been going too far up the field. But that wiped out a number of cars in front of him, and it's allowed him to really move up through this field. So at least one of our championship contenders did find a little bit of good fortune in that one, Justin.
Indeed, it's going to allow Barrett Rolfe, in turn, the chance to try and gain some more positions off the restart. Remember, 3-1 the first lap. That's seen the end of Charles Teed's race early on in turn. So to reset your top 10, it's Wagner, Rigney, Malechka to the third, Newsom, Fowler, Van der Sant, Forsyth, Malone, Gian, and Branch. Your top 10, your biggest movers so far, and Zoldo and Kresge. They're up 10 spots respectively. Most spots lost. And see, with the significant damage in 15th, that's a minus 13. But coming to the start of lap 16 this time by 118 to go. From Charlotte Motor Speedway, iRacing pace car dropping off this time. Green flag waves up towards the stand. Field in the hands of Matt Wagner. We're backing away. Nicely handled on the restart from Wagner and Company. Single file amongst the top 10. Everyone gets back into a rhythm here at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Several drivers already trying to get side by side. Barrett Rolfe, not a surprise, is among the first of them trying to make moves. Nearly squeezed into the fence by Hacker.
It's always interesting to see how drivers react to a caution like that. That was a big incident early in the race. Some drivers, after incident like that, will tend to take it a little bit easy, while some drivers will see this as an opportunity to really push forward. And it looks like Barrett Rolfe is one of those drivers who is trying to push forward, but Ken Hacker is having none of it, as they are both closing in on, I believe that is Jeff Xiong and Joe Branch in front of them, and it's turning into a little bit of a pack back for that 10th position.
How much do tires matter? How about Robert Malechka III already taking the race lead away? Alexis Newsom trying to follow suit. That in turn built up after side-by-side the previous lap, and Malechka III just stuck the bottom and ran off and pulled away by 2/10, coming through that corner to pass by Wagner and Company.
Yes, tires definitely will matter here. As the run goes on, you will see that the drivers will have to stay off that bottom line. So right now, when the tires are fresh, that's where a lot of these moves are happening, and why drivers are trying to stick to the bottom as much as they can right now, because they know it won't last for a long time. So what I'm really intrigued on with Wagner and Rigney right now is whether they can stay up there with Newsom and Malechka on those fresh tires, or whether those older tires will really hamper them. But this is also a really good battle back there. Oh, now we're back at the front here. Yeah, so you'll notice that Wagner and Rigney, they're running just a little bit higher, especially on entry into these corners here, trying to get a little bit of that clean air on their nose, trying to get as much downforce as they can, because those tires just aren't working quite as well as the tires on the two factory-backed cars in front of them.
Looking at this race lead group as Wagner and Company trying different lines. For Alexis Newsom, this good start to the race is so critical because the past few rounds have been disastrous for that car. 20th, 22nd, 22nd in 3 straight races. This is all while, too, the difference between 8th and 9th as well has already blown up, Andrew, to 1.4 seconds between Malone and Rolfe.
Yes, when Joe Branch and Barrett Rolfe and Company were all fighting together, that really slowed them up. They had a couple of very, very close moments there, and Barrett Rolfe and Ken Hacker did manage to get around Jeff Xiong and Joe Branch, and it's cost them, as you said, almost a second and a half. So that's going to be a big dent in Barrett Rolfe's hopes. I'm sure that he was hoping to be much closer to that group in front. Right now, he's got to try to find a partner to work with to try and find a way to get back into the draft of that leading group of 8 cars and get into Trevor Malone's draft right now. That's his number one concern. Meanwhile, all of these guys back behind him, they've sort of nicely fallen into line for now at least. And so that's at least going to help Barrett Rolfe in his quest here.
Keep in mind, last time by, for the most part, times were matched across just about the entire pack except for a couple competitors. Chris Fowler, one of those who picked up time last time by. He's now up inside the top 30. And we've talked about how Fowler's been strong the past few rounds in the past few months. Continuing that with this drive, now 3rd on his strategy.
Fowler's doing an excellent job. He's really had a lot of bad luck this season, but his results really haven't shown how fast he's been for much of this year, as you were mentioning, Justin. But he's doing a great job here today. He's keeping within that draft range of the leading 2 of Malechka and Newsom. But we're also seeing that Matt Wagner and Mike Rigney are really falling back through this pack here. They were just not able to stay up on those older tires with Malechka and Newsom. And we're actually seeing Trevor Malone, who's the last car in this group. Oh no! That's Alex Van de Sant in the wall!
He's down into the infield, the 97 machine with a hard lick of contact. Van de Sant, one of the championship contenders, now on the apron, and it looks like his day may be done. To the tow truck he goes as he pushed hard up off of turn 4.
Yep, that was a straight-up mistake from Alex Van de Sant. He was right in the draft of the car in front of him, of Craig Forsyth. Closed up really, really hard on the back end of him as he was coming off the turn there. And as I mentioned in the pre-race, that downhill transition, it just flings you towards the outside wall, and you almost feel like you're a passenger when you're in an aero wash like that. Nothing that he could do, but at the same time, he needed to be a little bit more heads up, driving earlier in the corner, let up, and that was a mistake that from Alex Van de Sant that could cost him contention in the championship moving forwards.
Absolutely huge. We're down to 18 cars running just as that all happened too, mind you. Ken Hacker also hit the wall in the exact same spot. He too had to come down to the lane. So now we're down to just 18 cars running, and we're just about 30 laps into the race. We've seen plenty of attrition, Andrew, in practice, but it's now starting to cross over into the race.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is this is the first time that it's gotten this spread out, and what can happen when it's spread out like this is that the cars aren't really getting checked up as much as they do when they're in a pack. And when they get checked up, they're not going through the corners quite as quickly. When they're this far spread out, the draft really comes into effect, so the speeds are getting up just a little bit here, Justin, and it's causing people to be pushing just more than they're expecting coming out of these corners, and that's where you're seeing the incidents like Alex Van de Sant, like Ken Hacker coming into effect, is just how much speed that these cars are going through right now as these tires are starting to wear out on them.
You've seen just how much Craig Forsyth, too, had to turn the wheel to be able to get around, and that was on the middle line, trying to get around that dirty air of Matt Wagner. You see that separation build up around the racetrack. Chris Fowler, of note, is within 9/10 of the factory-backed 1-2 machine, so he is slowly reeling them in, just sniffing a touch bit of draft, but not enough to fully eat into the gap, just matching lap times at the moment.
Yeah, the trick for Fowler is that it's really hard for him to anticipate the draft, because you can get a draft and it'll kick in a lot more as you get closer and closer. So he might be getting a draft for a lap or two, and then he'll hit wall of air, and it'll cause him to have to lift out of it, and it'll cost him a tenth or two. So there'll be a bit of a yo-yo effect until he can really sort of master where that draft really comes in and starts to be able to anticipate it with the lifting off a little bit earlier in the corners. As we're seeing a nice battle here between, I believe that's Sam Ryman and Christopher Kresge, and Matt Houston now coming in on the back of Kresge as well.
And I will take this time to mention Samuel Ryman started competing in Speedway Series events, Andrew, a few rounds back, and he's actually in turn come away with some strong finishes, with being able to avoid attrition and in turn some smart strategy. Take the Pocono race, for example. He came away with a top 10 run in that quietly after he saved a lot of fuel before getting to the checker.
One of the things I've always respected about Sam is how well he takes care of his car. He does the smart thing so often in a race in being able to take care of his car, and he's just one of those drivers who will always be around at the finish. And he just does a great job of that. As we actually have seen now, Matt Wagner has actually been able to come back around Craig Forsyth here. They were having a little bit of a battle. So you're seeing that the old tires that Matt Wagner and Craig Forsyth and Mike Rigney had, they've started to equalize with the likes of Craig Forsyth, of Trevor Malone, and we're starting to see some battling here in the top 5.
Downside is they've lost the toe of the top 3 by more than 2 seconds already, as Forsyth tries to get unclear with his fresher tires. Lap times in the 24.3s and 4s at the moment. Trevor Malone, Mike Rigney are also in this respective pack. And you can tell just how difficult it gets to be with passing on older tires, because Wagner's now making the outside work to defend.
Yeah, the outside will really come into effect later into these stints, Justin. You can only hold the bottom for so long because it takes so much grip and so much downforce that you need to be able to stay down there. So what happens is the line will move up the track as the run goes on, but then the other trick is that ultimately clean air is the best place to be. So you see that Craig Forsyth just got a whole face full of dirty air through 1 and 2 there, and it caused a big checkup and almost gave Trevor Malone an opportunity to go on the inside there.
Also was given a bunch of dirty air in 3 and 4 as well, as we take a look at the Sim Experience driver profile for Craig Forsyth. And his time in the Speedway Series has been impressive so far. 13 starts, 5 top 10s, 2 top 5s, still looking for that elusive first victory and first pole. First start, of course, came at the start of the season at Twin Ring Motegi. His best finish has been 4th at Chicagoland. And keep in mind, he has shown flashes of speed throughout the campaign. He's performed higher than that 4th place mark in a few different rounds. And also when you swing in the fact that he nearly came away with a Retro Series victory at Michigan, he's got some good momentum heading towards his direction. He described that Michigan victory, Andrew, as a win despite finishing 2nd.
Yeah, lots of momentum for Craig Forsyth, and I think that Michigan near victory, as you mentioned, that's going to be key for Craig Forsyth. Is he now has some real experience of what it's like to put together a full race and really perform for the entirety of a full-length race here in Lionheart. And that's so important to get that type of experience, because it just teaches you the little things that you need to do throughout a run and throughout a race to get that little bit extra and to turn those top 5s into podiums and into wins.
By the way, this entire grouping is starting to spread out a little bit once more. Barrett Rolfe is the 5th car in this train, also trying to find the high line. He's gained 13 positions. He's now the official biggest move of the race so far at +8 from his starting spot after his qualifying troubles. And keep in mind, Barrett's had to do this all season, Andrew, with how he's qualified. Sometimes has had some bad luck, sometimes he's been able to charge through the pack and take the lead in 6 laps. Today, it's the in-between of that.
Yeah, I think today he benefited from a lot of good luck from that caution. He was able to avoid the melee in front of him and really benefit from that. But I think what you're seeing now is, now that he's in the top 10 here, it's gotten a lot more difficult for Barrett Rolfe. He hasn't really been moving too far forward. In fact, from where he started this last run, I believe it was in 11th place or 12th, around there. And for the last 20 or so laps, he's been sort of stuck in this group, as we actually, I believe we just heard the call from Matt Wagner. So that is that strategy of Matt Wagner and Mike Rigney. Wagner is coming down to pit road this time by that on lap 46. So that will just be enough to put him in the window for one more stop. But it'll be very, very tight for Matt Wagner here.
In mind, that includes the paced laps too from the previous caution, so Wagner's in. Mike Rigney able to extend his run on forward a little bit further with 87 to go. Mike Rigney also indicating just now over the radio he plans to come in this time by for his service, and that's an intriguing way to enter the pit lane. Andrew, the difference there. Wagner pulled off the banking out of 4. Rigney sacrificing time by pulling off on the apron in turn 3.
Yeah, that's an interesting strategy. He must not be confident coming off the banking in turn 4 there, but it's a much slower way of getting into pit lane, so that's going to cost him a good 5 or 6 seconds, I would estimate, in fact. So it's a bit of a puzzling one for me. I think if it were me, I would be practicing and making sure that I can pit in off of 4 nice and safely here, because it is definitely much faster than what we just saw Mike Rigney do.
Yeah, that may take him out of the contention of the lead group. He was just a little bit behind Matt Wagner before the stop. To put for comparison, Wagner just zipped on by him and is already pulling away by more than a corner. Speaking of pulling away, Robert Malechka III pulled away with the clean air, is running now a 10th a lap faster than Newsom. In turn, the lead has grown to 2 seconds, while Craig Forsyth elects to come in after just 37 laps.
Yeah, this is an interesting call from Craig Forsyth. He is right in the window to make it on 43, 44 laps from here. So it's not too out there a call. I think what he's trying to do here, Justin, is he's trying to utilize the undercut a little bit, trying to take advantage of fresher tires and maybe get a little bit of a draft going here as he exits pit lane and just try to make up some time on the people around him, get him on a little bit different tire strategy, and leapfrog some guys and maybe get towards that leading 2 or 3 with Malechka, Newsom, and Fowler after the pit stops have cycled through.
Indeed, as we continue to see these drivers cycle about here, Christopher Kresge has also had to come in It appears, but unfortunately it may not be of the schedule variety, it's of the DNF variety. He's had to pull off the racetrack. You see him pull off slowly into the lane. He is already out of the paddock after his respective situation. Look at that right side. He's got a ton of side pod damage.
Yep, a lot of right side damage for Christopher Kresge. Looks like he had already hit the wall once and nearly hit the wall again, and I think the car was just so ill-handling that he decided to pack it in. And that type of damage in the W12, it's really, really difficult to race with, especially at a 1.5 miler. You get a lot of drag, and the car starts to do some really bizarre things with the aero, doing some weird stuff for you. As we look at the battle between Joe Branch and Luis Gonzalez-Nunez, Luis Gonzalez-Nunez, in fact, is really another driver that I want to highlight, has been doing a very good job here today. We've seen sometimes he's been a little bit on the aggressive side. Today he's sort of been much more patient, and he's running a really solid race here, and he's now put himself up into the top 10, Justin.
Very impressed with Luis Gonzalez-Nunez, who has had a whirlwind of a campaign, to say the very least. He's shown flashes of speed. He's led races this season. He's wrecked from the lead even, Andrew. It's been that type of a year.
Yeah, it's been that type of a year, but it's not been that type of a race yet. So hopefully Nunez is putting in a nice solid race, as we see Chris Fowler and Trevor Malone both into the pits. So now we're starting to see some of the real pit stop coming into the normal pit cycle coming into play here, with Chris Fowler leading the way onto pit road.
Call just came in over the radio as well. Robert Malechka third. Lands come in with a 2.5 second lead into the lane this time by. From Malechka third, he elected to use the banking in 3 and 4 as we take a look. Dean Mull's car currently now up to 5th. You see the awareness needed for some of these drivers with that entry into turn 4 as Malechka third makes the slow roll as another car comes out right in front. That's George Anzaldo, who finished his service.
Yeah, and that would give a minor heart attack to Robert Malechka, as Anzaldo sort of pulled right in front of him, and I'm not sure if he had a lift there, but it's one of those things, like, you're going down pit lane as the leader, you haven't been seeing a car for a very long time, and suddenly a car comes out in front of you. That can distract you. Fortunately, Malechka was able to gather himself back up, and he didn't have an issue going through his pit stall there. Now, as we see also Barrett Rolfe coming in, Alexis Newsom, interestingly enough, is still out there, though, so she is really going along with Luis Gonzalez-Nunez and Alex Guyon are the last 3, as well as Dean Mull, are the last 4 drivers to not pit in yet.
Just as you called that, Newsom just came in. Houston completing his respective service. Nunez coming in with Alex Guyon. Keep in mind this pit entry, we talked about the tactics to enter the lane. This is also an intriguing entry to try and make sure you execute because of the pit wall that was put in as part of the Roval configuration a few years ago, and the race sees its second caution. Second caution is out just at the end of the pit cycle, and it's going to be intriguing what may have caused this one here, as we have cars now having to slow up here, and it may have been the 20.
Yeah, I think it was Chris Fowler. We're seeing the end of it here, but I think he made contact with the wall coming out of turn 4. It looked like I think he just got a little bit too low, clipped the... Oh, and there was a car coming into pit lane. That's what it was. There was a car coming into pit lane in front of him. He was taking the inside line, and then there was a slow car coming in there, and it looks like he just went straight up the track to avoid him, and then straight into the outside wall, brushed the wall, and then he's just along for the ride across the inside there, and brings out the caution as he was trying to get it slowed down there.
Interestingly enough, that was near identical to spot one of the earlier drivers who had trouble was able to stop towards. That did not bring out a caution flag, but it's worth noting Dean Mull was the only driver in the field yet to pit at the time of the caution flag. So now the field is in an interesting predicament here, because just about everybody is now in a wave around situation. While everyone's going to be able to get the lead lap back from about 15th all the way down to 15th or 16th, this will shuffle the running order just a little bit. Alexis Newsom it appears was also able to stay on the lead lap at the time of the caution flag. So Newsom and Mull will be 1-2 for the restart. Everybody else has to take a wave. And some other bad news, if I'm reading this correctly, Barrett Rolfe may have lost some additional time to the point where a wave would not get him the lead lap.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see where this all shakes out. I do think that...
I think Rolfe may have sped based on the interval.
Yeah, I think Rolfe may have sped, and I think so. He might have been going in 2 laps down. He will get 1 lap back, but I think he might have been a 2nd lap down, and he's going to require another wave around. Similarly, Matt Wagner, who was also in our top 5 before this pit cycle, he is in a similar predicament to Barrett Rolfe, so he might have sped as well. So those 2 drivers will definitely be 2 drivers to look for, as they'll have to get their laps back the hard way coming through once all this shakes out.
Can confirm Barrett Rolfe had probably one of the more intriguing speeding penalties you may see, because he would have been okay, Andrew, in the first segment of the pit lane. And keep in mind, when it comes to iRacing, like you see in some various in Real World Series, they use timing segments. The first segment is from the yellow cone to the first white line. He revs up here, though. That goes from 45 right up to more than 50. That pushes the average over the speed limit and gives him speeding.
Yeah, I think what happened is he just didn't engage the speed limiter properly, so when he hit the gas to try and get up to his speed limiter, it actually went above it because the speed limiter wasn't engaged. So it's one of those things that you have to be so careful, and there's so many different things that can go wrong on pit entry, and that's just disastrous for Barrett Rolfe. He, fortunately enough for him, his nearest competition in the championship, in Matt Taylor and Tony Schowen, they were both caught up in that first incident, so it won't be as big an impact on him as it could have been, but that was still a mistake that he couldn't afford to make here, and that's going to put the likes of Alexis Newsom, Robert Malechka, and Joe Branch much closer come the end of this race.
If he does not get a lap back, keep in mind, he is in a situation where he may have his 4th non-top 10 finish of the year. Meanwhile, the points without drops you see at the side of your screen, Barrett Rolfe still would keep an advantage, but only slightly now. But you see the players have changed. That's because Newsom's having a solid race. Newsom having the race she needed to try and recover some of the lost points recently. Taylor will lose ground. Malechka III is currently projected to gain a lot of ground. And remember, Malechka III still needs 2 more starts before he reaches the same number of starts factored in as everyone else. 10 starts to everyone else's 12. So there is the potential of shuffling here, especially with a lot of those points gains picked up as a result of this race in the position shuffle. Tony Schowen potentially could see the biggest hit.
Yeah, there's going to be... If Barrett Rolfe can't get himself back in front of this field here, there's going to be some major changes to this championship, and it's just tightening up as these tend to do here in Lionheart. So I think that, let alone having a very interesting race for the rest of this, we're going to have a very interesting Final 4 races coming towards this championship finale in Auto Club in a couple of months here, as we are ready to go back racing with Alexis Newsom leading the field here, Justin.
Just about halfway in this event, and it's about to get intriguing because Wagner and Rolfe are right behind first and second. Expect them to fight to try and get their lead lap back. We're back underway from Charlotte Motor Speedway. A solid start for a majority of the field. The first checkups are around Wagner and company, then side by side, Alex Guyon and Trevor Malone for a split second as they go back single file. See several of the drivers in the mid-pack trying to fight for the edge of the top 10 currently. Of note, Robert Malechka III has already passed by the lap traffic to close up towards the draft of the top 2. That's all while the fighting in turn, Andrew, has allowed Forsyth to basically pull away from everybody else by nearly a second already.
So, sorry, Justin, we missed something on on that last pit cycle that I think is going to be key. Barrett Rolfe, when he knew that he wasn't going to take a wave around, he actually went down on pit lane. So he is now actually 2 laps down, not just 1 lap down, but 2 laps down here. So that has even put him further behind the 8 ball. So he now has to make up 2 laps on his own. I'm very puzzled by why he took that extra pit stop there.
I'm confused now too, actually, because that is an intriguing decision in turn. So that could have major ramifications for how this could turn out, unless he gets some luck, especially depending on how these drivers fight in front. It's now Newsom in the race lead. Moll still falling out behind Malechka the third. But the lap down cars stay to the bottom. Wagner nearly slides up into Dean Moll. This is all well too. There are a few drivers in turn with some of the stops who are on much older tires. Forsyth is on 19 laps on his stint. The drivers up at the front are 9, 11, and 7, respectively, inside the top 3 lead lap.
Yep, this is going to be a very mixed up sort of order here. We've got, as you say, some people who are on very newer tires. We've got a few who are on older tires, and it's going to create a lot of chaos for this first few laps. We're already seeing a lot of gap in between the top 4 here, and then all the way back to Luis Gonzalez Nunez in 5th position here.
With that, we'll take a step aside. You're watching the Karnox Charlotte 200 presented by Chris Fowler Racing, live on racespottv and ESTV.
Wreck avoidances.
Stay low. He's high, stay low.
Daring passes.
Oh, you're gonna get it.
Silly jumps.
Oh my god, a drive-through.
The thrill of victory.
They're against the wall. Good win, Mark. Stay low.
And the occasional mishap.
My sim crashed.
This is the DMLC Racing Channel.
Welcome back to coverage of the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by the DMLC Racing Channel for the Karnox Charlotte 200 presented by Chris Fowler Racing. My name's Justin Prince alongside Andrew Kinsella with Art Junior Hikipati in the producer seat as we are within the final half of this race. Live time and scoring is available at racespottv/Indy to keep up with your favorite teams and drivers. The competitors continue to make their way around the racetrack. One more stop expected for just about the entire field. Newsom, Malechka III, and Mall all have elected to run single file for now. In turn, with the help of some of the lap traffic, they've broken away by more than 2 seconds from Luis Gonzalez Nunez and Trevor Malone.
The more things change, the more they stay the same, Justin. How many times this year have we talked about the factory-backed drivers getting out to a bit of a lead and sort of stretching things out? And more often than not, it's Alexis Newsom and Robert Malechka controlling the field from the front. The surprise here is Dean Mall has been able to stay with him as Mall actually gets into the wall coming out of turn 4. A little bit of the commentator's curse. And our third-place driver takes it straight on the pit road, and I think we will avoid having a caution here because of it.
So he finds his pit stall and immediately pulls in the tow. Or rather, he finds the pole sitter's pit stall. Either way, hard hit to the right front tire and bye-bye race car. That's a carbon copy, Andrew, of what we've seen several times tonight.
Absolute carbon copy. He just has too much aero push, doesn't lift off the throttle enough, and just goes right straight into that wall on the exit of turn 4. Again, it's so tricky because of the way that the banking is situated. It really pushes you towards the wall when you're least expecting it and least want it to happen. But one thing that has done, Justin, is that's elevated Luis Gonzalez Nunez into a very solid third-place finish. Or not finish, but third-place position here for now. And he's got actually a pretty good gap on fourth-place Trevor Malone right now.
Up 20 positions, and the last time we talked about Luis Gonzalez Nunez in a great spot to break through the gremlins, he spun for the race lead. And then it was involved in 2 additional incidents. Let's not go towards that route tonight as we take a look at a fight. George Anzaldo putting up some great scraps for the 8th position currently.
Yeah, some really tight battling here in the mid-pack between Jeff Xiong and George Anzaldo. The guys have been going at it for a number of laps here. Anzaldo does not want to let Xiong go, and in fact, he's going to try and slide back up. That's tight coming off of turn 4. Both of them do a good job through there of keeping off of each other as we go side by side, continuing into turn 1 and through turns 1 and 2 here, Justin.
A great scrap. It does lose them some time, keep in mind, by doing that. But one of the things made clear, especially with how close George Anzaldo's gotten in a couple different rounds this season across Lionheart competition, George will not back down if he sees a chance to move up.
Absolutely. George has been sort of kicked it into another gear this year, and he's been doing a really, really good job of finishing races high up in the field. Another driver who we're riding on board with who does a good job of just hanging around and then suddenly he's there at the end is Joe Branch, as we see him working over the 08 of Alex Guyon here. This is for, I believe it's 6th position. Joe Branch is the lone Adrenaline Motorsports car left in this field after Tony Schowen was taken out in that first incident. And so it's very important for the Adrenaline Motorsports pair that they score as much points as possible with Joe Branch here. So it's very important that he stays out of any potential conflict and really keeps his nose clean, but really maximizes the points both for his own championship hopes and for the team championship.
Absolutely going to be so critical. And let's take the time to talk about these team standings in turn then, because we talked about at the top of the broadcast where Race First Red and Factory Backed were right within the differential they needed. And tonight has shown to be a good example of if things stay the way they are, they may close it up to under 100 or so. Again, it's Schowen and Branch, the only 2 who are in the field tonight for Adrenaline Motorsports, and that's going to be a major swing.
Yeah, all that Joe Branch can do right now is finish as high as he possibly can, but with Newsom and Malechka really controlling the field from the front, it's going to be a tall order to keep those 2 backed, and I do think that Factory Backed is going to go forward substantially. Crucially, though, Raceverse is not necessarily having the best race right now, so it's not as bad as it could be for Adrenaline Motorsports, but that pair of Newsom and Malechka is really going to eat into their gap in their safety zone here as we come to 3 races to go after this one is complete.
We are now inside the fuel mark to make it the rest of the way, and several drivers are close to being in a spot where they have to pit. Mike Rigney, who is amongst this fight, is already up to 44 laps on this stint, 42 laps this time for Craig Forsyth. Several more are in the low to mid 30s, so a majority of the field expected to come down with the next 10-15 laps at the latest.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see exactly when these cars elect to pit. I do think that for the most part, these guys are going to want to stretch it as far as they can here on this stint to have as light a car as possible and as short a pit stop as possible. But at the same time, you might see a few drivers here take sort of the Craig Forsyth strategy, try and get an undercut. We also have seen how risky that is, because if a caution comes out at the wrong time, like nearly just happened between George Anzaldo and Matt Houston there, if a caution comes out at the wrong time, you can get caught a lap down, and just ask Matt Wagner and Barrett Rolfe what it's like being a lap down car here at Charlotte.
Barrett Rolfe still 2 down. Matt Wagner never got his lead lap back, still 1 down at the moment in this respective race. 15 cars still on track, just more than half at the moment. Looking on board, this is Robert Malechka III, the factory back machine. The separation now up to 7/10 amongst the teammates. And this is similar to the last run. This is the point of said run where, with the clean air, we've seen the lead car break away by at least a couple 100ths to a full 10th a second per lap.
Yep, the tires are just falling off enough that you can't really hang in the draft as much as you could at the beginning of the run. So what you're seeing is that just lap by lap, Alexis Newsom has been able to eke out a little bit of a gap on her teammate, Robert Malechka, as we're actually seeing the beginnings of this pit cycle coming in. Craig Forsyth, we knew he was actually one of the cars who had gone the longest before, and he needed to come in now. George Anzaldo, though, he is one that didn't necessarily need to come in, but he cut his stint just a little bit short to come in early here. Looks like Mike Rigney is another one who is on pit lane right now.
Joe Branch elected to follow on through this time for service 2. Forsyth and Anzaldo came out fairly close to one another by about 2 to 3 seconds after their respective stops. We'll see how things shuffle about as Trevor Malone and Luis Gonzalez-Nunez not backing down to their scrap despite losing 1 second in 5 laps.
Yeah, these two have been going at it for a number of laps here, and Trevor Malone has really been harrying the back of Luis Gonzalez-Nunez, but Nunez does not want to give up that position and give up the fight here. I think Nunez sees where he is and sees that podium position, and he does not want to do anything to jeopardize that at this point, and that includes letting by a potentially very fast car in Trevor Malone. Trevor Malone, incidentally, is another one, Justin, who has been very impressive, not only in this series, but in some of the Speedway Series races very recently. He hasn't had the best luck in either series, but Michigan in particular was a good example of Trevor Malone doing a very good job up front for a very long time, and he's, again, put himself in very good position in this one.
Remember, in that Retro Series race you're referring to, he was involved in an incident when the leaders fought 3 wide on lap 18. At Michigan. Still keeping himself clean. They've picked up a bit of time, in part because Alexis Newsom has now come on in. She made it 41 laps on her respective stint. That cycles Malechka III to the lead. Luis Gonzalez-Nunez and Trevor Malone staying single file for the time being in their respective fight. Currently, 8 cars expected to come in for their scheduled stops. That will close out the said window as Newsom, who has had some bad luck on entries lately, having a nice smooth day on pit lane compared to some of the previous events.
Picture perfect stop from Alexis Newsom as we see Trevor Malone also down on pit road. What'll be interesting to see is Robert Malechka has stayed out another lap even after the one, so he's gone at least 2 laps further than Alexis Newsom on this cycle through the pits. It'll be interesting to see whether Malechka is able to leapfrog Alexis, or whether Alexis will be able to use some of this draft here and come out in front of Malechka, as we see Malechka down on pit road in that factory backed entry right now, Justin.
So much good to third, able to stretch it on forward to 45 laps in total. Samuel Ryman also stretched to 45. Last drivers yet to pit are Nunez, Guillon, Gian, Houston, and Musselman. That will then turn the page on pit stops expected for this race pending caution flags. Malechka to third, already off and away. Alex Guillon, Jeff Gian drive on by. Alexis Newsom is just in the middle of this pack. Here comes Malechka to the third, and Newsom still able to jump in front of Malechka to the third.
She was able to stay in front, but it was probably not as big a gap as she would have been hoping for here, Justin. Malechka does still have to get back up to racing speed, but he is crucially still in that draft position there that will allow him to draft up on her team, on his teammate there. But Newsom is also working the draft right now. So right now, this traffic in front, the slower traffic that hasn't pitted yet, this is crucial. If Newsom can get in front and be able to stay in front here, this is where the race is going to be won.
And something just popped up over the radio. Robert Malechka III has a penalty for going over the blend line in through turns 1 and 2. It is not clearable since he crossed the line just barely to the corner, and he's coming at a wrong time too with Matt Houston in front. So Malechka III is now at a contention with a penalty.
Unbelievable. Just a small mistake from Robert Malechka III, and this will put paid to any potential hope that he had here in this race. I do think that, I believe that it is a drive-through, but he might have to actually have a stop and go here. Hopefully he's got all of his things shut off here so he can just stop and go. But that is going to be huge for Robert Malechka, and this really puts Alexis Newsom in the driver's seat for this for the remainder of this race should we go green here.
So Alexis Newsom now by a significant margin in the race lead, 4+ over Craig Forsyth. Joe Branch 9+ seconds behind. Georgian Soto and Luis Gonzalez Nunez currently shuffling and fighting. They cycled right behind Malechka III after serving the penalty for the 91 machine. And keep in mind, the penalty and the timing of it was razor thin. And this is one of the more finicky tracks and more stricter tracks when it comes to the blue cone line rule to come across into the racetrack. If you go a touch bit on the blue line, it in turn technically brings you onto the apron, Andrew, and onto said banking, I should say. And in turn, Robert Malechka III touched that little bit of banking, race over in terms of contention.
Yeah, and it's such a long pit exit too, and you have to be so close to the white and blue line there that separates the apron from the track, because it's very, very sketchy closer to the inside of the apron. So you're really, really close there throughout basically the entirety of 1 and 2 to that line that you see on the left side of our screen right here. And I think that is what caught out Robert Malechka. But as we look at this battle for second here, we have Craig Forsyth is a little bit in front, but for third here we have Joe Branch and Luis Gonzalez Nunez and George Anzaldo just a little bit behind. This is the battle for the podium here, and crucially for Adrenaline Motorsports, one of the factory-backed cars has now gone back and is unlikely to finish higher than 13th or 14th barring an incident. So this is the thing that the Adrenaline Motorsports and Joe Branch in particular really needed. He's up there fighting for a podium spot, and he's really going to be able to mitigate some of the damages to Adrenaline Motorsports in the team championship now.
Keep in mind with this pass you just seen moments ago, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, fresher tires by 8 laps. That critical for Luis Gonzalez Nunez to drive on by, already latching along with the lap traffic of Malechka III and Rolf, who are on similar tire cycles, breakaway by Joe Branch by more than a second. Now approaching the final 20 laps this time by, as things could get intriguing in turn on how this plays out. Luis Gonzalez Nunez with the fresher tires of 9 laps compared to Craig Forsyth might be able to reel in the best run all year by far for that 14 machine after a flurry of DNFs, 8 this season in Speedway alone.
It's been a great drive from Luis Gonzalez Nunez, but it's not over yet. He still has 20 laps to go. And one of the things that we've seen is he has made a few unforced errors here. So what we really need to see from Nunez here is a little bit of patience, especially right now when he's in the mix with some lap traffic here. He really doesn't and can't afford to get too mixed up with them. He's got to be really focusing forward on Craig Forsyth and really focusing on bringing that car home, be it in second or third right now. He can't get into too much of a battle here with Malechka and Rolf, because they are not fighting him for position here. They're in their own battle, and it's very important for him to just recognize that and allow them to race their own race right now.
Audrey just there over the radio from Luis Gonzalez Nunez. He nearly knocked the wall down and checked up Barrett Rolf, so it was near disaster for Nunez, who is in line for his best finish the entire season in the series. Best finish previously this campaign, 7th. Just behind him, George Enzotto looking for one of his better runs of the campaign, trying to battle with Trevor Malone to hold on to a top 5. And we talked about how George Enzotto has been able to battle. This would be his first top 5 for Enzotto if he can find a way to undo the pass that just happened.
Yeah, unfortunately for Enzotto, Trevor Malone is on fresher tires, but if he's lucky, what can happen here is Enzaldo can use Malone to bring himself up to Joe Branch right in front of him. As we see George Enzaldo nearly knocking down the wall himself there coming out of turn 4. It's really, really tricky, especially when you have those older tires and you're being passed by someone on fresher tires. It's so tempting to try and replicate what they're doing and push it to the max, but those old tires just can't take it as they get further and further into the run, and Enzaldo nearly knocked down the wall there. If he's good, though, he can probably just stay there with Malone and try and get onto the back of Joe Branch for that run to the checkered flag here. But Jeff Shong, Alex Guillon, Matt Houston, I do think that this battle has been going on for pretty much the entire race at this point, Justin. And these guys have been battling back and forth, and Mike Rigney is also in the battle as well. They've been battling back and forth, but they've been doing a really good job of keeping it clean as well.
They've stayed pretty close together in terms of times. Mike Rigney is close on behind, but has 10 lap older tires than most of the cars in this group. It's been an intriguing ride in turn, and they are trying to keep within reach of one of the most quiet runs of the day as well of Samuel Ryman. Samuel Ryman, the last of the onboard cameras for the featured sign we have through the field, still remaining in this race, was able to gain a lot of time with some of the cycles just up by 9/10 from this group as they stay single file, some of them trying to find the clean air pockets.
As we actually go up a little bit further here, Justin, to the battle for 4th position between Joe Branch and Trevor Malone. Trevor Malone closed in almost a second in just 2 laps, and now they are battling side by side. The one advantage that Joe Branch does have is that even though he is on the older tires, he does have the low line and clean air in front of him, so it is allowing him, at least for now, to stay with Trevor Malone, but I think Malone does have the pass complete now.
So Trevor Malone utilizing 5 flat fresher tires to get around for 4th position. That was after closing up about a 1.4 second gap to get up to Joe Branch after passing George Enzotto just a few laps ago. Meanwhile, Alexis Newsom continues to hold on to the race lead, approaching 10 to go this time by, all while it's hard fighting at the other end of the racetrack. Matt Houston now side by side with Alex Guillon. Guillon trying to hold on to the 9th position by utilizing the higher groove. Gets the launch off the banking. Matt Houston back single file, trying to rebuild that run.
This is the danger zone for a lot of these drivers, particularly Alexis Newsom out front. She really doesn't want to caution, but these drivers are starting to get desperate back in the field, fighting for those top 10 positions. The likes of Alex Guillon and Matt Houston, both of them really need a good finish here, Justin. They've had up and down seasons, and having a nice solid top 10 is good, but at the same time, being in a battle like this with 10 to go, it's so tempting to try and go for it.
Now down to 8 or so laps to go, this time by the stripe for Alexis Newsom. There is Newsom. She has been on her own this entire run ever since the mistake from Robert Malechka III. 7 seconds is the differential between her and Craig Forsyth. Nunez has started even out meanwhile with the 72 to even out at about 2 seconds back. Here's Samuel Ryman, who we were just talking about, who was in a good position, and now he's in 11th. Why? He got in the wall.
Another victim of that arrow push through the turn 3, turn 4 complex. He's behind George Anzaldo, just drifts up that little bit wide, and that will put paid to an otherwise really, really solid drive from Sam Ryman. It's really a shame to see that. I think he probably would have been in line for a 6th place finish there with the way that George Anzaldo was fading. So very unlucky stuff for Sam Ryman there.
On the bright side, for those who like yellow and red cars, Joe Branch is still running clean in 5th. Right behind him still, hard fighting for now 8th for Guyon, Houston and company. George Anzaldo has fallen back into this grouping and has already lost a spot to Jeff Gion, who's been able to pull away by several car lengths. Matt Houston trying to take advantage of a checkup, forced to lift himself. Alex Guyon now trying to peek to the outside. Anzaldo blocks the run, though, towards the outside, under 5 to go.
This is the closest battle on track, and what a battle it is. George Anzaldo trying to hold on to those older tires. Alex Guyon really, really wants by him, and Matt Houston and Mike Rickney are just sitting there waiting to pounce.
Oh, they
touched.
touched.
This is going to get very tight. They touch coming off of turn 4. Everybody checks up. It looks like we've gotten away with it for now, though, Justin.
No damage to Alex Guyon, who hit the back wing of Anzaldo. Matt Houston, though, drove away on the high side. Houston now up to 8th position. As they reset, Anzaldo tries to take the clean air away from Matt Houston. Under 3 to go this time as the leaders continue to see their lead crumple up. Side by side behind us, Rigney trying to take advantage of the checkups for 9th.
This is some great battling. Rigney on the older tires as well. He is trying to take advantage and has gotten by Alex Guyon. Meanwhile, Luis Gonzalez Nunez is still having a solid run here, and he is closed to within 0.8 of a second to Craig Forsyth, but with only 2 laps to go, it's, I think, going to be a little too late for Nunez as we go to 1 to go with Alexis Newsom right now.
Alexis Newsom has had some horrific luck the past few rounds after having several consistent finishes. Pit entry became a major disaster for the factory back machine. She finished 20th or worse in 3 straight races. Alexis Newsom breaks the cold streak tonight. Checker flag wave, she wins the Karnox Charlotte 200 presented by Chris Fowler Racing. Alexis Newsom jumps into victory lane for the 3rd time this season, with Forsyth and Nunez 2nd and 3rd. 11 cars round out the lead lap in a thrower with several twists and turns and several ramifications to the championship tonight.
That was a wild race, especially to start with, but a dominating drive from Alexis Newsom. She did exactly what she needed to do. No mistakes. Didn't put a wheel wrong this entire race. Even as her teammate made mistakes, she did exactly what she needed to do. Was the fastest car on track for most of this race, and a well-deserved winner, Justin.
She gets to celebrate, and this is the run Alexis Newsom needed with how the championship had been faring out. This is all while the fireworks go off. It's worth noting for Luis Gonzalez Nunez, you can tell he's pumped up too. He's doing burnouts with Newsom on the front stretch.
This has got to be a relief for Luis Gonzalez Nunez. He's had so much bad luck, some of it self-inflicted, some of it just a matter of circumstance, but he's finally got the monkey off his back. First podium in Lionheart, and well-deserved. Great drive for our biggest mover on the day in Luis Gonzalez Nunez.
Celebrations now wrap up from Charlotte Motor Speedway, and what a race it was. This race could have ripple effects for the remainder of the season, with several championship competitors seeing themselves tumble in the Karnox unofficial race results. Alexis Newsom takes the checker flag by 8.6 seconds over Craig Forsyth, while Luis Gonzalez Nunez gets the best finish all season in Speedway Series competition. For him, his first podium, 9.2 seconds behind. Trevor Lone comes away in 4th position, with Joe Branch rounding up the top 5, waving the flag for Adrenaline Motorsports. Jeff Sheehan was able to hold off some hard-charging cars to get to 6th, with Matt Houston, Mike Rigney, and Alex Gouillon ending up getting around George and Soto in the final few laps to round out the top 10. AJ Musselman was the last car in the lead lap in a lap at 21.8 seconds behind. A quiet night for the Team Race vs. Black Machine, while Samuel Ryman knocked the wall down and went from a top 10 run to 12th. Also a lap down, Robert Malechka III. The blend line rule penalty could become major, to say the very least, in the championship standings after tonight. Matt Wagner quietly ran well tonight, but also went one lap down in 14th. Barrett Roll 15th with Dean Mull 16th. He was the first DNF with Chris Fowler crashing to the infield. 17th place is where he ends it. Christopher Kresge comes back to competition to 18th place. He finishes, while Alexander Van Descent crashed. That brought him to 19th, 106 laps down. Around the same time as he hit the wall at a turn 4, Ken Hacker did the same. Hacker, however, finishes one lap below him in 20th. Rest of the field, Ron Hacker, 21st position, 114 laps down. Hill Bensey, after winning at Iowa, got involved in a massive one early in this event for 22nd. The drivers involved in the big one, Dakota DeMay, Tony Schowen, Nick DeGroot, Matt Taylor, while Charles Team hit the wall early in this event. On lap 1, he only made it about a lap and maybe a few feet. Gary Gotzo did not take the start. Mike Rigney gets the fastest lap at a 23.732. That's a look top to bottom at your Karnox unofficial race results, and brings us into our HyperX post-race show, because the Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com, and don't forget to use the promo code LionHRT15 for 15% off orders. With that, let's dive straight into HyperX Victory Lane, where Alexis Newsom breaks the cold spell. She celebrates win number 3 of the campaign in a critical time. Alexis, big performance tonight. Finally, you break a spell of 3 straight sub-top 20 finishes.
Yeah, it feels good to finally break the streak of bad luck and taking myself out. Just try to be careful tonight.
And it showed with the speed as well. Now, in terms of this performance, though, this helps you in the championship. What's that now like, knowing you performed how you needed to for the Drivers' Championship?
Yeah, I honestly thought I was out of it, but pretty much everyone who I was fighting against had a bad night tonight, and well, being able to pull out a win on the night like that, take advantage of every opportunity. I think I might be back in it now, but still a few races left.
Indeed there is. Congratulations, Alexis, on the victory.
Thanks.
Alexis Newsom back in HyperX Victory Lane after a cold spell of a few weeks, while Craig Forsyth finished second in the Retro Series, finishes second now in the Speedway Series. Craig, you described that finish at Michigan as a win. You back it up with a strong performance in Speedway. How are you feeling tonight at Charlotte?
I can't believe I avoided those the early incidents. I mean, the early incidents, avoiding those were what changed the whole course of the race, because, it was really close. I felt bad for Matt. I mean, I can't remember who it was that spun sideways in front of us, but I just happened to be the lower car at the time, so I was able to get down onto the apron, and he wasn't able to get low enough to get around him. And then, but with the separation, Chris was able to get past Matt Wagner early on, and I just got stuck behind him. So the race first team made the decision we were going to pit early there, and hope the new tires would get us back up to them. And sure enough, got back around, and then of course the caution came out, so that sort of negated all that. At which point it was just drive and hope like heck we could get a good result, and we sure did.
You sure did. And how difficult was it to try and fare special with the aero wash tonight? Because the Achilles heel, it seemed, for the field was turn 4 exit. How difficult was it to try and make sure you didn't join the victim list of smacking into that wall?
Yeah, it was extremely important to not be right behind in the wash of the car you were following. Like, if you were following me on any of those turns where I was always higher than the car in front of me or lower than the car in front of me, never directly behind the car, because if you got directly behind them, you were going to start washing up, and it was hard to even notice you were washing up until it was too late to catch it.
Made it so intriguing to turn how things played out. But now, with some good momentum over the past few days in Lionheart competition, what's your focus now like with just a few races left in the Speedway series?
It's the points at this point. The points don't matter. It's just the podiums, getting the results on the race. So it's caution to the wind. Get to the end of the race with a good result.
Congratulations tonight, Craig, on the run.
Thanks, Justin.
Craig Forsyth from 12th to 2nd this evening, but the biggest mover was Luis Gonzalez Nunez, up 20 positions and finally on the podium after some of the worst luck we've seen for anybody in Lionheart this season. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, you're finally a podium finisher. How are you feeling?
I don't know. I really still like a shaking, like a feeling. I don't know. I can't believe it. I start on the back of the field. I thought, okay, I'm gonna start to the back, so I don't want to be in trouble. But I don't know. I still cannot believe it, really. But yeah, was tough. It's a really tough championship I have. But this is, for me, it's a winning. It's a winning.
We've seen that enthusiasm with the burnouts with the Lexus Newsome tonight, and how difficult has this season been, in your opinion, especially with the 8 DNFs coming into tonight and finally breaking that spell this evening?
It's hard. It's hard when you go to the cockpit, just focus to, okay, let's do something better than the last time, and something happened. So it's like okay, let's see next time, like a Pocono. Or like the first round in Motegi, I was on the first. I started on third. I was third, and after out of the fuel, same for Richmond. Sorry, same for Milwaukee. It's many races like I feel like a disappointment myself. It's not about the other people, but it's about myself. But now it's like everything is like races or change the page, and everything's new. So I know it's gonna be maybe good for now, but this is, for me, is a winning. I win the race, so just for my mind. So really, I'm really happy for the result and everything. Really.
Now you mentioned Richmond as well. That, funnily enough, is the next race for the Speedway Series, October 25th, the HyperX 175 at Richmond, 233 laps. How do you look to build that momentum now that you've broken through? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think so. I'm gonna start chill. I don't want to be in trouble. Like I said Richmond, but it was a Milwaukee. So Richmond, Milwaukee is the same short oval. So I want to be chill and just keep the results. So this is my strategy, because for the end it's just only 3 rounds more, and I want to finish on the best way. I don't want to like DNF again. So mostly DNF and just 14 and 15 position. So I want to finish in the best way. That's my strategy now.
Congratulations, Luis, on the victory.
Can I say something before I leave? So I want to say something in Spanish. I want to translate, because I have 2 big fans in my country. It's my father and my mother. It's now 1 a.m. in Chile, and he's still watching me and support me. So I'm watching every single race and we have in the Speedway and the IndyCar Series. So I say in Spanish, muchas gracias. Este tercer lugar es para ustedes dos, y de verdad le agradezco por apoyarme en todo. I say thank you for support me, and this third place by me is a winner. I say again, is for them, and I want to say thank you for the sponsor for Lionheart is simrace 24/7. They support me, and it is my main sponsor in my car. So this is third place for this guy for support me and this time. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you very much for the time. That's Luis Gonzalez Nunez, third place tonight. Like to thank him, Craig Forsyth, and Alexis Newsom for taking time to speak to us during the HyperX post-race show. And now 3 races remain, Andrew. Richmond, Kansas, and the Triple Crown event at Auto Club. The next 3 rounds, this is setting up to be extremely busy and wild, to say the very least. This could come down to the double points.
It absolutely will come down to the double points, Justin. This was a race of redemption for a lot of people and a heartbreak for others, but a lot of our championship contenders, they're going to have to turn the page very quickly here, because we're going to a short track at Richmond next, and short track racing in an Indy car is some of the most fascinating racing that you can watch as cars come and go, the tires fall off. This is going to be tight, action-packed race coming up here as we gear up for our final 3 races here in our drive towards Auto Club and that championship.
Richmond is going to be important. We've seen some of the wild runs at Iowa. We may see some of that crossover to Richmond. On that note, we like to take the time to thank the title sponsors for Lionheart competition. First, the DMLC Racing Channel. Are you looking for entertaining sim racing content? Look no further than the DMLC Racing Channel. Follow former Lionheart Retro Series Driver of the Year Mark Cohn's racing escapades as he battles for wins and avoids wrecks with cat-like reflexes, all while providing commentary sure to make you laugh, cry, or both. Follow along by subscribing to the DMLC Racing Channel on YouTube or like his Facebook page at the DMLC Racing Channel. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the luxury ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperxgaming.com, and don't forget to use the promo code LION15 for 15% off orders. The SimXperience AccuForce Pro V2 is the premier professional simulation racing steering system. The key to its incredible realism is the groundbreaking direct drive motor control system, finding a driving experience that's second only to the real thing. For more information on the entire SimXperience ecosystem, visit simexperience.com. For sim racers, the buttkicker, Gamer 2, or Simulation Kit adds the missing driver-to-car connection, bringing more realism to your sessions. By accurately responding to in-game audio, you can feel the track like never before, providing increased vehicle handling and faster lap times. Are you ready for the most immersive experience in sim racing? For more information, visit thebuttkicker.com, and don't forget to use the promo code LION2021 for 20% off orders. Minus 273 is the premier name in karting gloves. Their industry-leading gloves are super lightweight and durable, made of breathable poly spandex. Whether you're a kart or sim racer, Minus 273 gives you the control to reach victory lane. For more information on Minus 273's full line of gloves and apparel, visit minus273.biz, and don't forget to also use Minus 273 LHRS15 for 15% off orders. And it's not just those 5 names, but many more, and all the partners who help bring the action to the Lionheart Racing Series. To learn more about them, visit LionheartRacingSeries.com. You can also find out more information on the 3 competitions that the Lionheart sanctioning body runs. Lots more Lionheart competition is to come. To follow along with the action, be sure to keep up with Lionheart on social media at Lionheart Series. STV, meanwhile, has all your esports needs, while RaceSpot has your V Motorsports action covered. Be sure to follow along on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and more. Be sure to hit the YouTube subscribe button as well with the notification bell so you keep up with all the sim racing action we get to cover. The next time the Lionheart Racing Series hits the track is this Wednesday for its IndyCar Series. They'll be traveling north of the border to Canadian Tire Motorsport Park for the 2021 edition of the Patrick Taylor Memorial Grand Prix of Motorsport, presented by Clipping That Apex. That takes place once more October 6th 10:35 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:35 p.m. Pacific. With that, it's time to say goodbye. For Istvan Balu, for Arjuna Kankipani and Andrew Kinsella, I'm Justin Prince. Thank you for watching RaceSpot.tv and ESTV's coverage of tonight's action. Congratulations to Alexis Newsom, your winner from Charlotte Motor Speedway. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.